So Sergeant Howie is sent to Summerisle, an island off the coast of Scotland, to investigate the disappearance of Rowan Morrison, a girl that has gone missing. So once he lands in this island, he discovers that the people there are unlike anyone he's ever met before. In this classic film that I've always loved, that I want to talk about for Halloween, even though it takes place in Beltane, The Wicker Man. So, happy Halloween, guys. I know that the Samhain season is close, and we're in that time of year, so why am I talking about The Wicker Man? So, the reason being is that it is technically a horror movie, and by the end of the film, it does turn into a horror for sure. So, what the film is about is this sergeant that's a devout Christian. He goes and investigates the disappearance of Rowan. And like I said in the intro, that he starts to notice that these people are not as Christian maybe as he is, and that the town is very much a pagan population. So I saw this movie many years ago. I can't remember. I think I was already pagan because it's been about 14 years. So I'm sure I was when I saw this movie originally. It could be the draw of why I wanted to watch it, because a lot of pagans will praise this movie. They'll say that this is the movie to see. But is it? There are pros and cons to this film. A lot of pros being that you get to see a lot of pagan customs, and I will talk about that. And a lot of cons being what happens to Sergeant Howie by the end of the film. So the pros. So Sergeant Howie, again, is visiting the town, and he is exposed to the pagan culture. He goes to a pub named the Green Man, and that's when he meets I want to sing it, the landlord's daughter, and the cast of characters that are the citizens of this town. I say I want to sing it because the first thing that caught me off guard when I first watched The Wicker Man was that it is a musical. I knew it was a horror movie. And the ones that know about The Wicker Man, and I am talking about the 1973 The Wicker Man with Christopher Lee. I've never seen the Nicolas Cage film before. I probably will eventually go and watch it. I've seen clips here and there. But this is the original classic I am referring to. And me being a huge horror fan, I think more than anything wanted me to explore this film. And what caught me off guard, like I said, was that once he goes into this bar, this pub, the Green Man, they break off into song. They break off and sing The Landlord's Daughter. And the ones that have seen this movie can hear that song in their head as I say The Landlord's Daughter. It's very catching and very off-putting. It throws you off. You're like, oh, it's a horror movie. What are they singing for? And this isn't the only instance. It's not just a pub song. But then they go on to another scene later on around the maypole. For example, there's a maypole scene, and the guy's singing a song there. And then they're doing a fertility ritual with a bunch of girls, and they're singing there. And it's a full song. And when Sergeant Howie goes to his room for the night, the landlord's daughter is trying to seduce him through the walls, and she sings a song. So it's a musical. It's a horror musical. And it's not comedic. It is not in any way comedic. So the real thing that's really interesting about the film, again, is that you get exposed and get to see a lot of pagan customs. In this village, they're teaching about the maypole and what the maypole represents, and you get to see them dancing around the maypole with a traditional red and white ribbon. You get, like I've mentioned, to see the fertility jumping over the bonfire for the young virgins. You get to see some superstitions and folklore that people use as medicinal practices, such as a little girl goes to the nurse with a sore throat, and she has a frog put into her mouth so the frog can take that sore throat out and absorb the sore throat, and the girl be healed. And like I said, the Green Man in, and a lot of symbolism that is very recognizable to the pagan community, which is why a lot of pagans praise this movie, even though the pagans are not the heroes of the film. They are very much the villains. But that also kind of splits the audience. Who do you root for? Do you root for Sergeant Howie, who is the devout Christian that is earnestly looking for a missing girl? But while he's doing so, he's also being very judgmental of the pagan community, questioning why there is no pastors, ministers, a church, and all their gods are false. Classic Christian. And you have the pagan community in the film that ultimately do something that people will not really approve of nowadays at the end. So you don't really have a good guy in the film to root for. They both have their negatives, and I guess their positives. So The Wicker Man paved the way for folk horror that we know today. If you've seen films like Midsummer, enough said. If you've ever seen Midsummer recently, then you get the idea of what the Wicker Man is. Except the Wicker Man is based on the Celtic deities. Like they talk about the god Nuada, which is a real Celtic deity. And like on Midsummer, which is your more Nordic flavor, I guess you could say. And so there are a lot of twists and turns in the film, and it's a film that I've always loved. It's a great horror film, but I don't know if I would recommend this movie to someone who's pagan that wants a good pagan movie, even though someone's told me that this is their comfort movie. I don't know if I would really recommend it to someone to show them this is the pagan movie to watch, especially if it's someone that's not pagan that wants to understand more pagan things. This is not the film. Yeah, you get to see, like I said, rituals and the maypole, like I said, and also this and that, and they have a lot of fertility. They have a lot of rabbits walking around, and not walking around, but there's a lot of rabbit and egg symbolism for fertility and so forth. But it is not a film I would recommend for someone that's not pagan to watch, to try to say, hey, check this movie out. This is the ultimate pagan movie. I say that because there's someone I know years ago that he was pagan, and he had heard years and years that you got to watch The Wicker Man. You got to watch The Wicker Man. And he took away from it what it was supposed to portray, that it's a negative portrayal of pagans at the end of the day. So, yes, they invade, or not Summer Isle, but Sergeant Howie invades and steps on land he never should have been a part of. But it is straight out horror at the end, and you can't help but feel bad for what happens to the sergeant at the end of the film. And I'm trying to be as spoiler free as I can be and not really give too much away. So for those that don't know, what is the Wicker Man? So Julius Caesar wrote when he was studying the Gauls and the Celtic people as they were invading those regions, and he wrote and reported that the Celts and the Gauls had something called what he called the Wicker Man, which it was sticks and twigs and straw, whatever, to build this tall structure that would have a place for human sacrifice. They would lead people in who would be either prisoners sentenced to death or volunteers if there were no prisoners, and also animals and so forth to be sacrificed to the gods. And that plays a part at the end of the film. And like I said, you can say it's not really a horror film, but I think the actor that played Sergeant Howie does a great job. You can feel the horror. If you were in his shoes, despite his judgmental attitude through the film, he breaks down and he's human at the end, and you can feel that horror as they sing, as what happens to him happens, and so forth. So it's a horror film, and it does not portray us really in a great light any more than something like Midsummer does. And again, it's kind of strange that I am reviewing and talking about this movie for Samhain or the Halloween season, even though it takes place on May Day in the film or in Beltane. But it is a horror movie, and that's how I decided, hey, let's do it. Since I'm talking about Celtic paganism nowadays, it makes it so I can discuss this great film. Again, I love it. It's a great film. I don't know if I'd go as far as say it's a comfort film, but it is a film I can watch again and again. I watched it once yesterday before I did this review. I've seen it many, many times. I will see it many, many more times. The songs are fantastic. The acting is great. Christopher Lee is amazing as always as Lord Summerisle. And you find out that Lord Summerisle, his ancestors at least, his grandfather, may not have come to the island wanting to start a pagan community originally, but that's how it evolved through Lord Summerisle's dad and now him. So very cool movie to see pagan customs, but don't go in thinking it's a pagan positive movie. Because once again, the pagans are the bad guys. They are the villains of the film. And at the end of the day, it is a horror film. So take it how you will. So there you go, guys. That's just my thoughts, my short thoughts on The Wicker Man, the 1973 Christopher Lee film. You know what? I'm thinking about watching it again today after just doing this review. That's how great it is. I'm sure you're going to love it. Just be warned, it is a musical, just so you know. I didn't know. Anyway, guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It brought me out the same way. To reverence the music and the drama and the rituals of the old gods. To love nature and to fear it. And to rely on it and to appease it when necessary. He brought you up to be a pagan.